you haven't used masking fluid before, you are in for a treat today. So, masking fluid is this incredible substance that prevents the paint from getting underneath the surface. So, if you wanted to block out some white of the paper, or if you wanted to block out some of the previous color, you apply some masking fluid to the paper, and then it helps prevent any leakages from happening. Leakages? Leaks. Today we're going to use that on our raspberry. So we're going to use it for the highlights, keeping the white of the paper as white as possible. Before that, we're going to start with a little warm-up exercise, and I'm going to be using white masking fluid. You can get blue masking fluid, which is a lot easier to see, but the cheaper version is the white one. So I'm going to use the hardest stuff so that you can see how it works too, just in case you don't have the budget for it. So grab your masking fluid, grab a brush, make sure you have a jar to clean the brush in and a rag to dry it. The masking fluid doesn't really want to be wet, and we have to clean it quite a lot because it dries incredibly quickly, and when it dries, we cannot use the brush anymore. So we're going to be cleaning our brush very regularly, maybe once every 5 seconds. And you're going to start by dipping just the tip into the masking fluid. So you don't want to fill the brush with masking fluid because, first of all, it's a waste, but there's also a higher chance of ruining the brush completely. So just dip the tip and then paint a straight line down the paper, clean the brush, dry off the excess on your rag. Now, this is going to be drying very quickly, especially when it's thin. So I could probably touch this now. If I just show you how shiny it is, how thin it is as well, just notice that we really don't need a huge amount at all. And that's really, really good practice to use. You don't want it too thick. You don't want to be sat there waiting for it to dry. So I just touched that and it's dry. So now I'm just going to mix a little color, a little wash. So make sure you have got a lot of water on your brush and a bit of pigment. And then all you're going to do is paint next to the masking fluid for now because I want that to dry. And then I'm going to add masking fluid on top of the paint in a second. So first of all, I just want to check that the masking fluid is dry on the left. It is on mine, so I'm going to paint a color on top of it, and you'll see that the masking fluid is pretty visible, but it does look like it's taken on some of the color, which it hasn't, so that's absolutely fine. Now give this a few seconds to dry, and once the blue on the right hand side has dried, I'm going to go with another bit of masking fluid. Now it cannot be wet at all, so do give this a few minutes. Make sure it's the same temperature as the paper around it. You'll see I'm just rubbing here just to make sure it's nice and dry, and that should take a few minutes. So once you're happy with this, we can then add a little bit of masking fluid on top of the color. So grab your brush, dip that in the masking fluid, and then let's try again. So this time I'm just going to go for a circle, clean my brush thoroughly, and again, just give that a minute or so to dry. It probably doesn't need that long, but we're erring on the side of caution today just to make sure we're not going to ruin our brush and make sure you just get comfortable with the material before doing any real damage. So when I want to remove the masking fluid, I'm just gently rubbing. I'm not pushing down a huge amount. It has a great grip and it kind of attracts each other as you're rubbing forward and back. And it's really satisfying. So I'm just removing the masking fluid on the purple. And then on the blue, I actually want to add a little bit more pigment. So I'm not going to paint the full thing. I'm just going to go for half the circle so you can see the difference between the original blue and when we've added a color on top. Now, again, I want that blue to dry because I don't want to be rubbing a wet blue around. So give that a minute, make sure it dries properly, and then let's do the same again. We're going to rub the masking fluid off and we're going to see what happens underneath. So now that it's dry, I'm just going to really gently rub the masking fluid just like I did before, and you'll notice that there's a bit of color underneath, but it's not as vibrant as we originally had it. On the left-hand side, that was the color we had, and we have taken off the masking fluid, which has picked up some of that pigment and made it a bit lighter. Now, it's not the end of the world because there is still blue showing, but just bear in mind that if you do want to use this and you want to protect a colour underneath, it will lighten up. So the best thing to do is either prepare for it to be lighter or try and make your colour a little darker as you paint it, and then it will just pick up some of that blue or that colour as you rub it off. So there's our warm-up. Hopefully we're ready now to use the masking fluid for the highlights in our raspberry, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this one. Now, what you can do for this raspberry is you can either draw it yourself, or I have added the outline for you to print on watercolour paper. Sometimes we want to choose our battles, and drawing a raspberry is rather challenging. So it's up to you how you're feeling today, whether you want to print it out or whether you are going to draw it by hand. So whatever you feel is best. Now, what you can do is you can draw the highlights on your raspberry. So let's go for it. We just want to draw around the white bits and just see that they are random shapes, okay? They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be exactly the same shape as you see on the screen. Just similar, that would be really good. And we're going to go across the whole raspberry looking for just the white bits. And just by doing this, it's going to give you the idea of a raspberry and the reflections and the little bubbles. So try to decide what are white and what are light. Really important. Down here, do you know what? I will just do the ones down here because they're not white, but they're very, very light. We can always just make them a little bit darker later on. So just spend a bit of time isolating your highlights. Okay, perfect. So when we use our masking fluid, we're going to be cleaning our brush quite a lot. So we don't want it to ruin our brush. Literally place a few of them on. Furiously clean it, dry it, and just check that you haven't ruined the brush. It's so easy to do. Whenever I teach public classes or people for the first time, we really get complacent as to how quick it dries. And really sadly, I've had to throw quite a lot of brushes just because we think we can beat it. That's the issue. We think we can beat it, but we can't. We can't beat, I'm going to say nature. I know it's a man-made thing, but you see here we've got a few little thick bits. I can just pick them up. So that's lucky. Bit of a ball ache, but luckily we're not painting so much of it with the masking fluid. So it's not the end of the world. We'll spend a couple of minutes doing this. Again, just make sure your whites aren't just being dropped on as big, thick clumps. And then when you look to the side, you should be able to see a sheen if you're using the white stuff. If it's not a bit of a sheen, then that probably means you can go a little bit thicker, but you don't need to go too thick, not like acrylic. It should just be a bit of like PVA glue that you spread over your hands as a kid and you're trying to peel it off your skin. Okay, let's see if we can pick that up. You see there's a little shine to them. If you've got the blue masking fluid, you'll see it is blue, but otherwise this is what we are looking for. So give it a couple of minutes to dry and we're going to come back and start on the pink. Sorry team, this clip did not exist, so I'm going to have to refilm it as we go through the next step. So the next step, we are looking at the base layer, and we're going to start off with a little bit of red. So add loads of water on this and mix it into your lid. Make sure it's really, really juicy, because what we want to do is spread this color around for our base. So this essentially is the next lightest color after white. Now you can go straight over the masking fluid, so do make sure you spread this around, and as you're spreading it, it's starting to dry and thin out. So add a drop of water, pick up more color that you've already mixed, make sure you've made enough at the start, and try not to let it dry. So you do have to work very quick to make sure you don't get any harsh lines that have dried down the middle, because obviously as you move down, that line, that edge gets much longer. So we want to make sure it's always moving, it's always a little bit damp, and then that's just going to help us to get a nice even tone with the light pink. So you can start to see the masking fluid come through. That's fine, that's normal. That is blocking the paint from getting to the paper. Next, we're just going to make a nice green. So this is going to be for the greenery on the raspberry. And I like to mix my light green with my dark green. So I'm going to do the same thing whilst the pink is drying. Just spread this about fairly evenly. Again, we don't want it to dry. We don't want any texture at this point. We're just trying to get rid of the white. So this time you're going to paint inside each shape rather than spreading the paint all over and not really considering the different segments. This time you are considering the different segments and then just getting that all over the painting. Okay, so hopefully that means the raspberry is dried. So make sure we give it a little touch. Let's see whether it's cold, whether it is the same temperature as the paper. And mine's feeling pretty good. So if yours needs an extra couple of minutes, just pause the video or just watch the next section and then come back to it when it's definitely fully dry. So what we're going to do now is show the shadows in between. This is quite a fun, it could look like a challenging technique, I won't lie, because you do have to keep looking at the reference picture because you're trying to see where it's darker, where it's lighter. So I'm just going to mix a slightly thicker red this time, and if your red feels not quite right, you can add a little bit of purple. It gives you that pinky glow rather than more red. You know, it's not quite strawberry, is it? It's a bit more of a pinky feel. So make it a little bit thicker, and then you're going to spend some time going in the darker sections. So let's find an easy one. Right, oh, I've got a hair in my brush. Right down at the bottom, this is nice and dark. So I'm going to go along the edge, paint that in, and if it needs a bit of a gradient, then I can clean my brush, but this one is more of a hard line, so I'm just going to leave that there. The one above it, again, find the darker edge. Make sure you don't paint the lighter bit in. So we've got the light of the white masking fluid, but also we have just lighter sections in general. So I'm just starting with the easier ones where I don't really need to do much blending, no blending at all recently, actually. And it's really important that you're looking at the shapes as well. So they're not all just a flat tone. Some of them kind of go in, and then you'll notice that I just used a slightly damp brush. It really wasn't that wet at all. And then I just tickled the edge where it's a little bit lighter. Let me show you on another one. I'm looking at the edge of the shadow. So first of all, I'll paint the darker bit. So get right in the corner there. Make sure it's nice and tidy. Look for the shape. Cleaning the brush, just dry the excess, and then just go along the edge. So it just softens the blow a bit. It's not so contrasty, and it means that the edge is just a little bit softer, which is exactly what we need for a painting like this. So you're going to spend some time now going through the painting, looking for the darker bits, and then hopefully that's going to start to look really nice. So I'm going to speed up the camera now, and I'm just looking for the darkest shadows inside the little nuggets, and then I'm just deciding whether to blend them or whether to keep them as a harsh line. So this could take you a little bit of time, but this stage in the painting is absolutely worth figuring out where these shadows are. After this, we will look at the raspberry as a whole. So for now, just focus on those little micro bits of detail. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So every little nugget has something interesting about it. It has some light, it has some medium, and it has some dark. So in the next video or the next clip, we are going to just look at how to make the full thing as a whole look more round. Okay, so we've done a bit of a rehearsal. We're kind of saying, all right, there's a dark bit here and there's a dark bit there. But what we really want to do now is try and get the curvature of it. So I'm just going to mix the same red that we did before. And then I'm going to do something quite scary. I'm going to paint this thick blob in the middle, clean the brush, and then blend that in. So we want to get the impression that it is round. So I'm trying to get the darkest element of the raspberry, which is right in the center. And actually, I'm going to go a bit darker. So let's go red with a little bit of purple. There we go. Got it. Clean the brush. And let's spread that tone around. So you can still see some of the darkness underneath, but we're really pushing that dark aspect there. Some down here. I'm actually just going to add more of a color over there. And then also down here. So obviously this will not be facing the sun or the light source. So that is naturally going to be a bit darker. Then also right under here. That's going to be a little bit darker too. So I'm going to wash that in. Give it a minute or so to dry because we've kind of ruffled up the paper a little bit. So we want to make sure we're not going to damage it even more. So let it dry and let's come back to that in a couple of minutes. Okay, it's looking pretty good at this stage and we've got the curvature, we've got a bit of a rehearsal for where the shadows are in the nuggets, but now we want to push things even further. So where you've already done your darker shadows, we're going to push that even more. Now, because the painting dries, it dries a little bit lighter than what you started with when you started to apply it. So we're basically adding several layers of watercolors to get the vibrancy and to get the darkness. In this stage, you are basically going to go over the darker bits again. So in each individual nugget, you're going to go over those and really exaggerate that contrast. So that means leaving the lights and pushing the darks. We don't want everything to become a big swamp of pink, but we do want to show that broad range from light to medium to dark. So we are going to pick up that color again, but this time even less water than before. And as you can see when I'm holding it up, that contrast is strong. Now that we've added layer upon layer, it's really showing some detail. So spend the next few minutes re-looking at the original. Remember to keep looking very regularly. And I'm going to speed up the video once again, but watch mine first, see what I'm doing, and then apply that to yours. So it'll take you a few minutes to do this. And again, you're checking the edges. Are they soft edges or are they hard edges? Do I need to just soften that and blend that with my brush slightly, or can I just leave it and make it a strong, harsh edge? So speed up the video now, and once this is dried, we're going to look at the shadow on the ground, but we're not doing that until all the detail is done. Okay, once you have done enough detail on the raspberry and you're happy with it, we're just going to add a little bit of detail over in the greenery at the top. We don't want that to be left totally blank, just a green. We want to add some detail. So make a slightly thicker green now. And then all you're going to do is pop a darker green near the base. So this is going to suggest that it's curving. Then I'm going to clean my brush and give it a gentle, slightly damp spread. It's just going to make sure it's not too harsh, and then just go on each individual leaf, do the same thing again. We will keep the background ones a little bit lighter just to show a little bit of depth, but that should just give it enough to look nice and clean. Okay, it's looking pretty good. I'm quite happy with it actually. I'm not going to do any more work to the raspberry itself, but instead I am going to add a shadow to the ground. Now it's always tempting to use black for a shadow because we kind of see it as a grey cast, but in this case I'm actually going to use dark blue and I might just do a touch of purple, but let's see what this looks like first. So the light's coming from the top left and I'm just going to pop that shadow underneath. You notice it's still quite juicy, there's a bit of movement. And I'm adding a dot of water and then I'm just going to spread that around, clean the brush, just dry off the excess slightly and go along the edge. So I don't want to go too much into the colour because I don't want to pull the colour into my blend. I actually just want to blend it into light. So that's quite nice. It's a good shape. It goes around the raspberry a little bit. And this time with blue and purple, I'm going to go thicker. So more pigment, less paint. And I'm just going to dot that on there whilst it's wet. So if it dries, let it dry fully and then do the same thing again. Or if it's still quite wet, you can add it whilst it's wet and then it's going to spread nicely through that shadow. Now I'm just going to manipulate that a little bit, give it a wiggle, and then just get that to blend in with the light once more. So this actually really helps the colours to pop. We've got the lovely contrast, so another dark element on a very light surface. And then the last thing to do is to rub our masking fluid off. So don't push too hard. Hopefully your raspberry's dry as well. Make sure that's really, really dry. And just really gently wiggle off the masking fluid to reveal the nice pockets of white that it's been protecting underneath. Now just make sure you are rubbing all of them off. You might leave a couple and be like, it's missing something. It might just be under the paint. So this is looking really nice actually. It's super satisfying to peel off the masking fluid because yeah, there are little bits that I forgot I'd done and it just shows the highlight coming from the light source and that looks like a pretty goddamn good raspberry. So once you're done, just make sure you're clearing off everything from the paper. Have a look to see if you need anything else. You might find that you want to add a bit more detail somewhere, absolutely fine. But for me, I think I have done it and I'm very happy with it and I hope you are too. Thank you for joining me for this raspberry painting and I'll see you in another video.